Hello, everyone. This is Dolores Cannon with the Metaphysical Hour. And we are live tonight, just that we don't know what day it is. We don't know what time it is. We're not even sure where we are.
Who are you?
Julia's here with me, too, but this was 5 weeks we were gone, and everything, they were taking all the shows out of the archives. But so that's why you never know if it's live or not, but we're saying it's live tonight. This is the day after Thanksgiving.
Until this is an archive.
Yeah. Until it's in the archives, anyway. Day after Thanksgiving, anyway. So we are back from a very long trip. But on that trip, we said we went to 4 countries, 10 cities, you said.
Yeah.
And we crossed so many time zones and so many date lines, back and forth.
Well, only one date line.
Well, we went one way and came back the other way.
Okay, we crossed it twice.
So that we really don't know what day it is, what time it is, because we kept losing hours, and then we lost a day, and
we got the day back.
We got it back. Then we get home and find out they had daylight saving time while we're gone, so that's another hour. So our bodies are totally confused. And they don't know where we are, what country, or anything.
Time to bring out the little violin.
Well, a lot of places where I was doing the lectures, we were staying just one day in each city, and I get up there and I say, I really don't know where we are. Didn't know what country we were in, what city we were in.
Yep.
But we had some more adventures, and I know the people who listen have told me before that they like us to tell us about the trips when we get back, because they said it's like we take you along with us. And we're always noticing the strange and the unusual, the things that are different.
Mm-hmm. And there's a few things that we saw that were unusual and strange and different.
Yeah. I don't ever go for the just ordinary. It's got to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been gone. Well, I think they had about 6 weeks, really, of archives, because I did the conference in Chicago before I left. Mm-hmm. I think we could even back it up more than that. We did a conference in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. It was on 10-10-10. Mm-hmm. And in that...
We did the show right before that one. So that was the last one we did.
Was it? Because that was the one where they did some ceremonies there for the 10-10-10.
Right.
And they buried crystals in the ground on what they thought was like vortexes. And you probably know out there that a lot of the crystals do come from Arkansas. This is where people come here to dig the crystals. For those of you in other countries, this is, they said, one of the largest crystal supply in the world.
Right under our feet. Ooh.
And they do.
I wonder if that has any correlation to you being here and what you get.
And all the weird stuff that happens.
Yep.
But people do, when they come to see me for sessions even, they take a few more days to go down to the crystal mines and get the crystals. So there's a lot of crystals up there around Eureka Springs. So they said they did the ceremony where they buried more crystals, and the ceremony was to activate it all, because that's supposed to be a special day, 10-10-10.
Right.
I don't really remember what the meaning of it was, but they put a lot of significance on it. Mm-hmm. So I did a lecture there. Then the next week I had to go to Chicago, and that was Joanne Macos. What was the name of that one?
The Lightworkers
The Lightworkers Conference in Chicago with Joanne Macco, and I've done several of hers. And that went fine. But then I come home, it was Sunday night, and I only had 2 days before we were going to go on this real long trip. So that night, in the middle of the night, I began to get a sore throat, and I came down the next morning with a real bad head cold. And, I never get sick. So I knew what my body was trying to tell me. This is what I work in all the time. Your body is always talking to you. You got to listen to your body. It's trying to tell you things. And so I knew what it was trying to tell me. It said it wanted me to rest, because in September we were in Europe, and then I had these other conferences. I'm getting ready to go on this long one. The body was trying to tell me it wanted me to rest. How are you going to rest when we're getting ready to go on a long...
You make me do all the work, and you can just tag along.
So anyway, I'm in the middle of the night getting a sore throat and a head cold, and I'm trying to count how many days is it going to have to be before I get to speak in Singapore. Maybe it'll be gone.
Right, right.
But I didn't have any choice anyway. So we start out on this long trip, and I break it up because it's so far. But the first talk was going to be in Singapore before we went down to Australia. So we started out, spent a night in Honolulu to break it up, because that's 8 hours from Dallas to Honolulu. And then it's, I think, 8 more hours on to Tokyo.
Right.
Because you have to break these trips up. I do, anyway. I can't do 16-hour flights.
That's a long flight.
That's a really long flight. And coming back is bad enough with 12 hours. So we stopped in Honolulu, then we went to Tokyo. But one thing, we came into the Tokyo airport. On the plane, coming from Honolulu to Tokyo, we were the only, you can't say Americans, we were only Anglos, I guess you would say. I don't know what to call us. What are we? On the whole plane, everybody else was Japanese, maybe Chinese going on. But here we get off at the airport, and we were the only 2 Americans, 2 white people. I don't like to use that term. That's not really what it is. We were just different. We were the only 2 different ones going through customs, just us. Everybody else was going through the ones going into Japan.
Yeah, so that would make us the only Americans.
The only other ones, I guess.
The only Americans.
The only 2. And
the only other, yeah.
It is. I've had done this before, but it was Julie's first experience as being the odd one, being the one that's different. We're the minority.
Right.
And it's a funny feeling. Everybody's staring at you.
Well, they kept staring, and I was thinking, what are they looking at? And then I realized, oh, we look different. So we're the different ones. So.
And you said we're taller, for one thing, but we stand out. And I think that's always a good lesson for anyone if you travel, to be in a place where you are the different one, you're the minority. Then you can appreciate what the other people feel when they come over to our country.
Right.
But as we got off the plane and were headed into the airport, like I said, I had this cold, and it was really bad at that point. And we're went through customs. Before that, there was a big camera up above this place we had to go through. And it had a sign, you are now going into a quarantine area, and this is a temperature camera. So I said, oh my gosh, I hope I don't have a temperature, or they wouldn't let us into Tokyo.
Right.
So we haven't found that in any other place we've gone.
No, we just had the temperature gun.
Yeah, and we went into Moscow. They wouldn't let you off the plane. They came down the aisle with a temperature gun, pointing it at everyone on the plane.
Right.
And I guess it was supposed to register your temperature. You saw it had a little screen on it.
Yeah, it's like an infrared. I think it would show if you came up as a hot spot or something like that. That would be a temperature.
So they were aiming it at everyone as they went down. And I guess if you had a temperature, you couldn't get off the plane.
Fever. If you had a fever, not temperature. Hopefully you had a temperature.
But also, was that the place they came in and sprayed everybody?
Yeah.
In Russia?
On the Moscow. No, that was from the Africa to Australia.
Last year.
Yeah, last year they came on and sprayed. They just went down the rows with cans of spray, and they're like, cover your mouth.
Cover your eyes. And they spraying everything before you were even allowed to get off the plane.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. Some of these Americans are complaining about these full body scanners and all of these things. They would really think all of this was an invasion of privacy.
Right, yeah.
Where they're going taking the temperature gun and spraying everybody.
Spraying, and then the eye scanners, and get over it, people. It's just the way we live now. So.
And they were taking fingerprints in some places.
Right.
But still, the security was a lot easier than it is in the States once we got out of the country. But, yeah, I mean, they talk about invasion of privacy, and it's just what you do. It didn't bother us. I was just hoping that temperature camera wasn't going to say I had a fever. But we were only in Moscow. We were only in Tokyo the one night just to break the trip up. But the people there were so polite. The Japanese people.
Yeah. On the plane and on
the stewardess.
Yes.
Very, very polite people. Bowing and very soft voices. And we can learn a lot from them. They really have nice manners. But that was in Tokyo. And then we had to go on from there to Singapore. And by the time we were getting there, I kept thinking, well, I hope I'm getting over this. It was getting easier. But we were there. I was there a day. I had to do the talk that day, I think, when I got in there. I don't remember. It was so long ago now. It was the middle of October. But I had to do a lecture in Singapore. And we had a really good turnout. And in all the lectures I was doing on this trip, I was doing 3 hours. Mostly the 2-hour lecture, and then I did a group regression of the whole audience.
Right.
So it was a little different than my normal lecture, and I was talking about the 3 waves of volunteers and the 2012, the New Earth, and all of that. But I was just trying to keep from coughing while I had trying to put the whole room full under with the group regression. But we had a really good reception in Singapore, and they want me to come back, and they said, would we have enough to have a class if I came back next year? And a lot of them said, yes, they wanted to do a class. So it looks like we'll be going back next year to do the class. But Singapore is a really nice place. I've been there about 12 years.
12 years ago was the last time you were there.
Yeah, and it has changed some. They're not quite as strict and severe as they used to be.
Yeah.
They still have their laws. They always say Singapore is a fine city.
Yeah.
But we got to do our Christmas shopping. We did have one day off, and so we went down into Chinatown and got my Christmas shopping done. But even the cab driver was telling us Singapore is considered to be the safest city in the world. And the reason is because of all of these tough laws that they have. They don't mess around. So if you're going over there, you got to be prepared for that. You don't take a chance in doing anything they don't want you to do. Because they said that's why they don't have very little crime. Because they don't mess around. You just go right to jail.
Right.
I don't know if there's any trials or not, but they just said they just haul you off. So people are too afraid to do anything that there's no crime. Very, very little crime because they really are strict punishments. I don't want to say afraid because I don't sense any fear. The people were really happy.
Right, but no, it probably is afraid. It's like Big Brother. I mean, they're watching, so you know they know you're what you're doing, and they know you're. I mean, they just know, so they just mind their P's and Q's. It's kind of like that. It's just they just know not to do stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, when I was there 12 years ago, I asked them, "Doesn't it bother you?" They know where you are at any time. They have advanced computer systems. They know where everybody is. It is kind of like Big Brother. And I asked them, doesn't that bother you? And they said, no, it's like they're our parents, and they care about us.
Yeah, but you asked them this time, you know, and it's probably younger people that you were talking to, and they didn't even seem to know what you were talking about.
Yeah?
Yeah, remember when you were talking to Lee, and you were asking him that, and he was kind of surprised. He didn't realize they had all that. So it's like it must not be real obvious.
Anymore.
Right,
But Singapore was one of the places where they always tried out the new technology. Yeah. And that's what I heard before when I went over there. That's where the computers started. And all the advanced ways to track people and the how they have cards so they know where everybody is.
They have all the latest gadgets and gadgets.
Yeah, but they started the computers over there and all of these things way before they went anywhere else to see if they were going to work. So I think they probably do have the latest things. But, yeah, there is a lot of young people now, so they aren't as strict as they used to be.
I don't know. I just know when you asked them that they didn't really know he didn't see it that way, the way you were referring to it. So so it could be it's not that obvious.
Maybe not anymore, because 12 years ago they wanted to know what books we were bringing in. They had to approve of the books. They had to know what we were going to lecture about. This time they didn't.
Yeah, they did. He had to get permission, but it wasn't. He normally doesn't have any problem, and he had a little problem. This time it took him a while to get the approval, and he figured it out. It's because you had been there before, and so you were on record, and that's where they had. It took them a while to check all that out. So normally they said it came right back, and on this time it took a while to get that approval back. So,
I didn't know about that part.
Yeah, you had to be approved to come in.
Well, it's like Dubai is the same way. You couldn't. I mean, when we went to Dubai, they had to know what books we were going to bring in, and they had to approve of any books we were going to be selling. I got so many books that we can always bring some in that will be something that will be okay.
Right.
But now they don't seem to have any objection with the hypnosis or any of that.
Right. Well, they do a lot of healing things there.
Oh, yeah, the Chinese especially. They've had that forever. The healing methods go way back. So that's something they really are into. Oh, I forgot when we started out. Let me give you the toll-free number. I didn't even think about it. We just dove right in.
It's been 5 weeks, people. 6 weeks, whatever.
Yeah, we got to get our heads still aren't in there together.
She says that plurally. She means herself.
Well, you're back to normal.
I'm back now.
Okay. But anyway, I forgot about that. The toll-free number, in case anyone does want to call in and ask us some questions. The toll-free number is 1-888-815-9756. 888-815-9756. Oh, we'll be okay by next week. But anyway, Singapore, it was a nice city, and it's
city country.
Yeah, because the whole island, it is an island, and the city is all Singapore is.
That's right.
And it's nothing but a city. There is no countryside. There's nothing. It's just all buildings. Everything
I think they said there was a little countryside. There's just not
much.
No, huh?
Because everything has.
Yeah, because they want to build it all up. So.
Yeah, everything has to be shipped in. Nothing is manufactured there. There is even the water used to be brought in from Malaysia. I think now they've found a way to desalinate the water, the seawater, take the salt out.
Yeah, and then they also recycle their gray water. They said.
Yeah, but it used to be they had to stay good friends with Malaysia because their water came from there. But everything is shipped in because nothing is manufactured or grown there at all. And they said they have 5 million people. But they're wanting to have as many as 7 million.
Yeah, 7 to 8 million is what they want to grow to.
But the problem is, how do you do that on an island? Because all the land is already taken up with buildings. But what they're doing, they're reclaiming land from the ocean.
Right, and they're also building taller buildings.
Yeah, they're going up. They either got to go up or out. So they're making the buildings taller. This is happening in a lot of countries we've gone to. They're just making all the apartments are in real tall buildings, no houses.
Right.
But they're reclaiming the land from the ocean. And of course, they were doing that when we were in Texas years ago, living in Texas. They just make land
where there is none.
Where there is none, out in the middle of the ocean.
Nothing's impossible.
So they just create land out there, and that's where they're going to put more buildings on.
Who says we aren't great and powerful beings and we aren't creators? See, they create land where there is none.
Well, in Dubai, there's no water at all, but they take the ocean water from the Persian Gulf and they desalinate it, and they're able to use it, so it's the same thing.
Yep.
If you have to, you'll figure out a way. But, yeah, they have to make it bigger because they're growing, and they got to either go higher or go out. But one thing I liked about Singapore, when I was there before, they had the good sense to leave parks and trees. When I was in Hong Kong 12 years ago, they cut all their trees down to build more and more buildings. And it's the most crowded city in the world, but it's also very polluted because you need the trees to clean the air. And they don't have anything like that in Hong Kong. But Singapore was smart. They made it part of their plan to have parks and trees. So that's helping, even though they got a lot of people, it helps clean the air. So Hong Kong should have learned a lesson from that, but they didn't. So it's one thing about traveling. You do find out a lot of interesting things as we go along.
Right.
And I think it would be good for people to travel, because one thing about traveling, you find out we're all alike.
The world becomes very small.
It does. It keeps getting smaller for us because...
Yeah. Well, as a thing, I thought it was so funny, and I mentioned it when I came back here. I mean, okay, this is a very small state. Arkansas is small. It's not very populated.
Yeah.
Our entire state population is less than a mid-sized city, really.
Yeah, because it's mostly woods and mountains.
Right. I mean, it's
very rural.
Yeah.
Rural.
Okay. Not that many people, and people think that we're all backwoodsy and we don't do much here, okay? Right? Hillbillies. Yeah, we're hillbillies. Proud of it. Okay, fine, we're hillbillies. We are in Australia, and I know we're going to get there in a minute, but we're going through We're going through immigration as we come in.
Yeah.
And we're at the booth, at the immigration booth, and I'm hearing the people in the immigration booth next to us, and they're describing, to the person. I didn't hear the first part of the conversation,
the custom official.
Yeah, and they're saying, well, it's right there. There's 4 states together. There's Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and that's where we are, right there where those 4 states are together. And I looked over and I'm like, that's where we're from. And the guy in the booth, the Australian, he's like, small world. Anyway, then we go, and we're going to mention all these places we went, but then we go to this dinner, all these people, and everybody's introducing each other, and the people right across from us used to live in the town, the city, right next to where we are now.
Where the airport is.
Right, and one of them used to be a Razorback. I used to be in the Razorback band, and we're like, and then they said, oh, yeah, there's another couple here from Arkansas, too, and it's like, what? So people, we are Kansans, get out.
We get around.
We do get out and around. So anyway, it is a small world. I mean, if you're going to find people from Arkansas on the other side of the world, it's a very small world.
In this little town.
Yes.
Of course, it's a town that it's the headquarters of Walmart, but still, it doesn't have that many population.
No, the whole state doesn't have that much. So.
And if you don't know what a Razorback is, that's the university football team.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Named after the Razorback Hogs.
Mm-hmm.
And Julie used to be in the Razorback band. But to find somebody on the other side of the world who was right there, that's really strange.
It's very strange. Very, very.
But yeah, for us anyway, we know the world is small because we don't even know where we are half the time when we're traveling. But everybody is like everybody else. A lot of this fear stuff people build up, being afraid of other nationalities, being afraid of other races, that's all it is. It's just fear-mongering.
Well, it's because it's something you don't know, and anything you don't know you're going to fear. And that's they can play that on that because we don't know enough about it. But just start traveling and going to these places, you'll find out these people are just like you. We're all the same. We all have the same objectives, the same priorities, the same, we are. In that way, we're all the same.
They all want to have families, take care of them. They want to have jobs and make money to support their families. It's usually the leaders are the ones that want war. They're the ones that want to have all the conflicts. The people don't. They just want to live like the rest of us do.
Right. They're just trying to get by, trying to pay for their homes, pay for their food, pay for, they're just like, that you'll find everywhere. Everybody's in the same situation.
Yeah.
Trying to go day to day.
So that's what I say. If more people traveled, we wouldn't have the violence, the wars that we do. We'd find out we're all alike. We're just people. But anyway, Singapore was an interesting place. So we got our Christmas shopping done. I'm not going to say what we bought, but we got our Christmas shopping done. I like to buy my Christmas presents in other countries because it gets something they don't normally get here.
Right.
So then we go down from Singapore. We flew to Perth. And see, even those are really long flights. None of those are short. But we had to keep breaking it up.
Right.
But we went to Perth, and I've been back there so many times. And I did the class there.
Did the lecture in the class.
Yeah, I think that's where we were at Halloween.
Yes, it is.
And they think it's so funny because they think Halloween is an American holiday. And they don't really celebrate it over there. They never have. It's not a big thing. But the kids are beginning to bring it in.
Well, yeah, they had on their morning talk show. I think it was the day of, it was the day of Halloween. It wasn't, for that night. And they were talking about that, and they were saying that it's starting to be embraced over there. And so that's what we were seeing. It was just starting to be acknowledged. Yeah, it was an American holiday, but they're taking it on, and they're like, oh, this is what they do in America. Maybe we should do it. And they say, oh, all the stores are grabbing on to it. And I realized, oh, it's just really kind of catching on. So they're just now really seeing Halloween.
I think the main thing they were doing was the costumes.
Yeah.
But not much.
Because they were trying to talk about, well, how are you going to explain to your kids what the costume is about? I was like, oh, my God. That was a long time ago we were doing that. So
they aren't into the candy yet and trick or treat because they said, I don't know if I'd like my kids to go up knocking on a stranger's door.
Asking for candy. That's what I was like, oh, my God. It's what you do.
But they're just starting to have the parties with the costumes. So it was funny. And they were just, it had no big lead-in like we do. It was just mostly that day they go and get the costumes and have a party.
Right. Yeah, they haven't gotten the full Western approach to it yet. So they'll learn.
So we are influencing the world with our bad habits.
Well, I think it's called commercialism.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Perth was nice. By that time, I was beginning to get over my cold anyway, after I left Singapore, and it was beginning to feel like I could make the rest of the trip. Usually the week is about as long as it'll last anyway.
Plus it was warmer there, too, so that was nice.
They're having their summer there now.
Well, they're going into their summer.
But we had 220 people at the lecture in Perth, and we had a big class. So every time I go back to Perth, it's getting bigger and bigger. We have our advanced classes there now, and the people I've trained are taking this and really using it, and they're having wonderful results.
Absolutely. Everybody in the class, I think, was having really good, in the advanced level 2 class, we're having really good results.
And it's like Australia especially is taking my method and really going with it, and it shows it can be taught, and they're having the same miracles that I'm having.
Right.
So that was in Perth. But the next place, every time I've gone to Australia, and I've been going since the early 90s, I always wanted to go to Ayers Rock. Now, we've always just gone from Perth to Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane, one coast to the other. And I always wanted to see Ayers Rock. One reason is I've written about it in my books. I told you before we went to south of France.
Right.
I wanted to see those places because I've written about it. I wrote about Ayers Rock, and I've always wanted to see it, but we never could work it into the schedule. This time we barely worked it in. We only had 2 days. One problem is they only have one flight going in there. But if you can imagine, some of you probably don't know, Australia is as big as the United States. Now, if you can figure the United States with L.A. and New York and Miami and nothing in the middle except one little town right smack in the middle, and that's Alice Springs. Of course, they have little bitty towns all over the place, but I mean, can you imagine the United States with nothing in the middle but desert?
And I have to tell you, well, I'm going to call it Planet Australia Australia is another planet. I'm not sure where it came from. I really don't. It's
They
different.
said it was the original of the Earth, and everything else continents split off from Australia.
Yeah, but it is so different. Looking at it from the plane, when we were flying over it, the landscape, everything did not. It looked unearthly. It was so different. I don't know. I'm sure there's a story to it, but
she kept saying it looked like we were flying over another planet. We've never seen landscape like that anywhere else.
Right.
And I kept asking the stewardess, what was that down there?
That wasn't the landscape I'm talking about, though.
It was the other part, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was even weirder than that. So.
But see, if you've got all of that land and it's desert, the only ones that could live out there would be Aborigines. But they talk about people have ranches, thousands and thousands of acre ranches, but they've learned how to find water, learned how to live. But the only ones out there in the desert, it's a million times bigger than the Sahara and all of that. And there's no water. We couldn't see any rivers. We saw a lot of dried up things.
Right.
But there were things we were flying to. We had to go to Alice Springs first, and I kept asking the stewardess what it was, and she said salt lakes. But it was all dried up, just like it was all white, like salt lakes.
Right.
And in the States, we have the Great Salt Lake up by Utah. But if you can imagine those for miles and miles and miles of desert with just these dried up salt lakes all over it. No sign of life, no signs of houses, nothing out there. No roads, nothing. Total desolation. And it's a little hard for you to understand unless you think of it in comparison to the United States and nothing from L.A. all the way across. That's a lot of land with nothing there.
No, they have a lot of land, and it's like, it seems like they should be able, they probably could, if we got to a point where we are just so populated and we have to have some place to go, that would probably be it. We'd figure out a way to make it work, so.
Yeah, like they did with the water and everything.
Right.
But
there's a lot of land over there, everybody.
But the majority of the people in Australia live on the coast. The cities are all around the coast.
Well, an interesting fact, I don't know if you heard, I can't remember if it was who it was that was saying it. It was either a taxi driver or it was Jason. Someone was telling us that over in that area in the middle, none of those kids go to school. Their school. None of them see a building. They're all done by computer and by telephone and by walkie-talkie, stuff like that. None of them go to a classroom.
Why was that?
Because it's too far to go. They all live out and everything, so they don't go to a class. They do it at home. They all do it at home.
The ones that are on the ranches or what?
Yeah, they're all on those ranches. Yeah, probably not Alice Springs. It's probably like up there, outside of there. So
because they were talking about some of those ranches, like tens of thousands of acres.
Yeah.
And they're so big they had to patrol them by helicopter. They can't do it with a horse.
Yeah, they said none of those kids go to school. They all go. They all do school by telephone or remote. By something like that.
Probably the computer.
Well, they do a bunch of different things, but none of them have seen. They don't see a classroom. I thought that was very interesting. So.
You don't see any other classmates. There wouldn't be any football teams.
Nope.
There wouldn't be any of that. No bands.
No.
People in America could learn a lot from that, I guess.
Well, it just shows how things change and adapt, what you have to do. That's kind of like what we used to be like, when people...
It used to be country.
Yeah, when it was country, and then they just did stuff at home, so...
But, I just couldn't...
it shows you, we think everything's like we are. And it shows you, no, some places are not... even though Australia is a very developed country,
but
it's
not that part.
No.
Not that part.
So...
I was trying to think, when I went to Wyoming or Montana, up in there's places like that, where there's miles between each farm.
Yeah, see, places like that have to adapt, you have to do something.
Yeah, they couldn't go to school, or they couldn't go to the next neighbor because all the snow they have up there.
Right.
So there are places that are different than what we think they are. But anyway, we fly into Alice Springs, and I was thinking, what in the world would anybody want to put a city out here in the middle of nowhere? But they said it's a hub.
It's the busiest place of the whole country because it's a hub. for everything. Everything going, it goes through there.
It hasn't got any
cargo, everything goes through there.
But there isn't any other way to do it, I guess. That's but it's just there in the middle of the of Australia.
Right.
And they said, I guess, when these, like the wagon trains, like they used to have in America, they had them over there going to find places to live.
Right.
They got that far and decided to stop.
Right.
But they said the reason they stopped was because it's called Alice Springs. They found out, they told us there's a huge abundance of water right there in the middle of the desert. There's but they called it a bubble of water.
They call it a ball of water.
Under Alice Springs.
I don't know really what that means, a ball of water.
But they said they had more water in Alice Springs than some of the other big cities in Australia. And those bigger cities have
Oh, they had like 3 times the amount of water that the places on the coast had. So the coasts were in drought all the time, and they were using 3 times as much as anybody else, and yet they were it was all supposed to be a drought. And so they said they had plenty of water.
Because in the big cities, they're trying to conserve water.
Right.
But here, Alice Springs has just got this huge abundance of water. It's right underneath that.
Right.
So I don't know how those old-timers knew that when they decided to settle there.
Probably witched it. They could feel it. Remember, they knew how to feel water. We've lost that ability.
Yeah. Probably would have told them,
Absolutely. They know how to feel water. Water has a certain energy. So.
But that's why they built, and it's called Alice Springs. It was named after the guy's wife,
right?
Like Sedona. I think we told them that we were in Sedona. It was originally the man wanted to call it Smedley.
Yeah, Smedley Junction or Smedley something. So, and
they said
too long.
It was too long of a name, so they just named it after his wife, Sedona. So Sedona wouldn't be the same if it was called Smedley.
Yeah, right.
So there's 2 places that are vortexes that have a very powerful energy named after the guy's wife.
Now that's something. I guess we could.
Well, first I want to tell them when we get off the plane in Alice Springs, oh boy, we were deluged by flies.
They followed us into the airport, just kept going with us. It's like, my gosh.
As soon as you get off the plane, there's a million trillion flies all over the place, and they're trying to get in your nose, in your mouth. And we first went there, we heard tales of all the flies in the outback, and they have these hats that they buy, and they have little corks on strings.
I almost bought one, but I decided not to.
It's like a cowboy hat, but all along the edge they have little strings with corks on them. And that's supposed to be for that area. You shake your head, and the corks are supposed to keep the flies away. They were also selling nets to put over your face if you were going to be there very long, or if you were going to go out and hike. But it was, the minute we got off...
I was told you're not an Australian until you swallowed a fly.
So they said after a while, they don't even try to shoo them away. They're just way, way too many. But they were... Oh, my gosh, there were so many flies. We could wait to get into the airport and then try to get back to our room. But tell them the story about, Jason is the man who set up my talks on the eastern side. He was telling about the woman who said she wanted to go with him.
Yeah, it was some project, whatever he used to do, and some project that they were working on.
He went out into the outback.
Yeah, he would go out, and it was it was a 4-mile drive to this campsite that they were going to, where they were working. And she was like, that's fine. He kept trying to explain to her, it's rough. There's our only gas or petrol is right here. We have to get it before we leave because there's nothing out there. Okay, that's fine. And,
no food.
And we have to take everything we take. I mean, that's all we have. Okay, that's wonderful. I'm fine with that. That's fine. He tried to explain it's going to be hot. There's flies. There's all this. It's okay. I'm fine with it. And so they drive out there, and
4 hours.
4 hours. And so she didn't even make it a half an hour. She said, I can't handle these flies. You have to take me back. I cannot handle the flies. so it's a big deal.
And it was something we were not expecting.
No, no, not at all.
Not at that at all. We've heard about it, but I didn't realize that.
Well, they're great. Yeah, they're right on you. They're not shy at all.
But I've had people in the States when I've gone to the UFO conference. I had one young man come up to me, And he heard all the stories about there's probably UFO bases out in the middle of Australia.
I wouldn't doubt it.
I wouldn't doubt it a bit. It's so isolated, I don't think anybody would ever know where they were. They wouldn't know how to find them in the first place.
Right.
But there's all these stories about UFOs in the middle of Australia, bases. So this guy said, I'm going to go over there, and I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to find the base. And I said, have you ever been to Australia? He said, no. Shouldn't be so hard, though. I said, you don't know anything about the outback, do you?
Yeah.
At first place, they said you go out there, you could die very easily. There's no stores, there's no gas, there's no food, and they're the most poisonous things in the world, or in Australia. It's not a place to play around with. The Aborigines have learned to live there. They're quite remarkable, like the American Indians.
Right.
They know how.
They're part of the land. They know how to work with it. So.
But no, it's not something to fool around with. Once you get out there, and they said you could be totally lost. You had no idea where in the world you were. But we went to Alice Springs because that's where you had to fly into. Then we had to take a little puddle jumper on to Ayers Rock, just like a half-an-hour flight. But because he only had the one flight a day, and we were just going to be able to be there that one day and have to leave the next morning. And I always wanted to see it. So we get there, and Julia found online they had what they called Dinner Under the Stars. It was going to be out by Ayers Rock.
Yeah, sunset.
You watched the sunset behind Ayers Rock. So we went out there, and they took the bus, took us out. And this is a national park, and the only thing there is just where these hotels are.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
And there isn't anything else.
Yeah, that's because everybody coming there is just coming to see that rock. So
the park, they want to go out and hike or something. But they had the airport, and they took you over to the hotels, and then they took us out in the desert where they were going to have the dinner, and we got to watch the sun set over the rock, behind the Ayers Rock.
No, it was on our side. It was over here. You
Yeah.
just watched it cast shadows on the rock and everything.
That's what I've written about in my book, that it's a bright red rock, but they said it'll change colors in the different light. So it turned purple right before the sun went down.
Very pretty. Very nice.
And so we were watching that. But you had to stay right where they told you to go. Because they said it has a very delicate ecosystem out there, was one thing. They didn't want people going wandering around out there to disturb it. It's a very delicate balance. Even though it just look like desert and a few, scrubby plants, there's nothing that we could live on, I don't think.
So delicate about it.
So
Not much of it. So
they said it's a delicate ecosystem, so they didn't want you going out there. And also they said, we don't know what's out there. All kinds of critters. So we had to stay right where they had the tables set up, and they were going to have the dinner. And they have some little lights to show you how to get to the restroom. Otherwise, it's pitch black out there. And the dinner, you got to have, they had hors d'oeuvres and stuff, and they were all eating out there. And Julie was braver than I was.
Well, when in these other countries, you want to experience some of the things that they do. You want to have original experiences that might only happen there. So
part of the food they had was crocodile and kangaroo.
Yep. Yes, folks, I ate some crocodile and some kangaroo.
I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Oh.
But I did. I think I did eat one of those little crocodile hors d'oeuvres anyway.
Yeah, it was done very well. It was crusted and it had some lemon stuff on it, so it really just was like a light chicken that has a little bit of a fish taste, but it really didn't have much of a taste. You can taste the lemon on it.
Well, it was like, just the idea turned me off anyway.
Yeah, but I wanted to say I did it.
So we had the dinner, and the sun went down, and it's getting very, very dark. And they had a man who was called the Star Talker, and they turned all the lights off so you could see the sky. And it's beautiful because there's no city lights. There's nothing around anywhere to cause any reflections.
Right.
All you could see was this black sky and all the stars. And there was no moon either. That helped.
Right.
And you could see the Milky Way. Now, where we live up here on our mountain in Arkansas, we can see it at night because we're a long way away from bright lights.
Right.
But this is the other side of the world. So they were pointing out the different constellations, and he was telling the stories of there's constellations there that we don't have in the States.
Right.
And on this side of the world. One thing I always thought it was strange when I was over there before, when I was looking at the sky, you probably don't notice when you look up, but all of a sudden you look up and things do look different. They're not the same that you're used to seeing because there were different constellations. And the one woman I was here before was trying to show me the a Southern Cross, because that's what they have on their flag is the Southern Cross. I said, we don't have that, but I said, we do have Orion. So she said, we have Orion too. I looked at him and I said, there's something wrong with Orion. It doesn't look the same. I figured out he's standing on his head. He was upside down. So you really are on the other side of the world. And what the man, the Star Talker, said, he said either they're upside down, the stars are upside down, or we're upside down.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Right.
But it didn't look the same. And also on that part of the world, the moon phases are opposite of what they are here. That's funny when you go from one place to the other and you see it a crescent moon in one place, and then you go to the other in Australia, the crescent moon is on the other side of the moon. Things get a little weird. But
I'm telling you, it's another planet. I'm telling you.
But
maybe we went on the other side of the Earth and didn't. I mean, on the other side of the sun.
We were in the other hemisphere. But you were talking about the UFOs. I've done so much stuff in Australia, and this is in one of my books, that there was some people living out there in the outback, in a little bitty tiny town, and they wanted me to come. This was years ago, because they said they had an alleyway where the UFOs flew over there all the time. And they wanted me to come and meet with them. And it was like going into the Old West. That's what it looked like, a little old western town. We would have thought straight out of the movies. And a little general store. And the only heat in it was a potbelly stove, just like the old western movies. And the women all brought in food like a potluck. And they proceeded to tell me all the tales about all the UFOs that were going over all the time.
Well, we need to go back there. I'm going to go see that.
It was interesting. The one woman was 90, and she was this town historian. And she kept a record of all the sightings. And so there are things going on out there, because that's a long way.
I doubt it a bit. Not a bit.
So that I did have a chance to see that, and I did write about some of the stories that I heard about in one of my books. I can't remember which one it was now, one of the convoluted books.
I think it was convoluted
one or two.
One or two.
But it shows there is UFO activity out there, because there's nothing there. It's like when we drive from Las Vegas down to Laughlin.
I mean, it's perfect area for them to be hidden.
Yeah, there's desert down that way, and there's no towns around, so nobody's going to see them.
Right.
But out there, all those millions of stars, I mean, they could have been up there. It's a beautiful place. But it was really nice. You sit out there and look at the stars, and you could see so many. And the Milky Way and all of it.
Well, the detail that you could see was really nice. I mean, because he would say, I thought it was a cloud, it was something like that, and it was actually a cluster of stars. And it was just, and there was two of them. That's one of the ways that they can tell their true south, is by these two clusters, and then you make a triangle from those.
He said that's what the old people used to do way back. And
I was thinking it was a cloud, because it was just, hazy right there. Well, it was a cloud. It was a star cluster. And it's like, wow, that's amazing.
And, because it's like you're in the desert. There's no buildings, no trees, nothing, just straight horizon, nothing to break your view. And all you could see was stars everywhere. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was great.
And I think we go back because they had some other trips we could take.
Yeah, next time we're going to go, we actually go right up to the rock. And
we found out about that. It was too late.
Right.
Because I had to go on, so we didn't have time to stay there and experiment any longer. Next time we'll know about the flies going to Dallas Springs, and we'll know about Ayers Rock. But they had a lot of other trips people would take if they wanted to go out and hike. Yeah. You can do it if you want. I have no ambition to go out there with all those flies and all those critters. But
I want to walk around the rock. I want to do that.
Yeah. But I guess I don't have as much of a sense of adventure as a lot of people do when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, we're here to learn and experience, and it's like, what? Let's see how much we can see and how much we can do.
But you were talking about you wanted to eat what they ate.
Well, I just wanted to experience that. I wanted to just, one was enough. I mean, I had a little more I think I had a little more of each of them. Just the kangaroo maybe at the dinner, and that was tough there. The first one, the appetizer, was nice. It was just a small piece, and
you said it was kind of chewy.
It's like beef. It was, the one at the dinner was tough. It was a little tough, but just to experience it. It's not like I'm going to make it part of my diet. I just wanted to experience it. That was it. Just like I'll experience calamari or I do draw the line on a few things because it's too obvious, and I don't want it to be obvious in my face, So.
Well, see, Julie is the more adventurous one. When we were in Ireland last year in Dublin.
That's not adventurous.
No, I mean, you say, I want to eat what's here. So in Dublin last year, she wanted the real Irish stew.
Yeah, but how much courage did that take?
Not courage, but I mean, you want to experience.
Yeah, I want to experience it. You're there. You're in the country. It's the flavor of the country. It's experiencing the country. It's experiencing the area.
And the real Irish stew was made with lamb, like you had. That was good.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
And then we were in Singapore. We had real Chinese food.
Yeah. It was. Is it dum sim? It was a dum something. I can't. It was dum sim. I think is what they called it. It had the small little pouches of things, and that was wonderful.
Yeah, we had a big selection. They just brought all this different Chinese food out. We got to eat it. So sometimes eating the real stuff is big. It's a big difference.
See, it's fun, isn't it? And who cares that you don't know what you're getting? I mean, you just try it, and what's the worst that can happen?
But when I was there 12 years ago and ate off a buffet, they had chicken feet soup.
Well, that's what I'm saying. As long as it's not obvious. If it's obvious and in your face, then that's where I draw the line,
Because that time it was the chicken foot sticking up out of the soup, and I said, no, that I'm not going to eat. And then they'll have
those little octopuses. No, I don't want eyeballs. I don't want brains. No, I don't want anything obvious. I'm not that adventurous.
But still, we got the real Chinese food on this trip, and we got to try the kangaroo and the crocodile. So then we had to leave and run out of time. I figured we had enough to talk about on this trip that we got a lot more.
Oh, we probably got enough for 3 shows.
It was
a long trip, remember?
And I don't think people are bored because some of this stuff they don't know. As they said, take us along on the trip.
Yeah, and we're not paid by the countries to advertise for them.
We totally don't. But when I was in Singapore, one of the men that came to my class came from Thailand, and he said, "I heard about you on the internet," and he heard He listened to this show every
so he's
Friday.
Probably out there. Hello.
I don't remember his name, but he said he listened to it every Friday night, and he downloads all the archives. So, Don, there's one from Thailand. And before we left, we had an email from Portugal.
Right.
And they wanted to know, who's that other woman who's always on the show?
It's me.
That's my daughter, Julia. So it does reach all over the world. So that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're coming up to time to stop now. And
the trip will be continued next week.
We'll tell you a lot more that you never knew about these places. And we'll continue next week. Okay. Then I will get back to metaphysical stuff, but there is metaphysical stuff in this also.
Yeah, it's called experiencing. That's why we're here.
Experience.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thanks for listening tonight. And, we all got back safely. We come back and it's cold and it's snow, and we don't know what time it is, what day it is.
Yeah. It's Thanksgiving yesterday.
Next week will be more oriented.
Maybe.
So good night, everyone, and thanks for listening.
Good night.
If you enjoyed the show, check out more of our other videos and be sure to subscribe and click the like button. Thank you for listening to the Metaphysical Hour with Dolores Cannon.